3:17 a.m. My phone exploded with notifications. Critical alert, unauthorized access detected. Critical alert, firewall breach in progress. Critical alert, database encryption compromised. I stared at the screen, read every message. Then I rolled over and went back to sleep. By 6 a.m., Pinnacle Financial Services had lost access to every client database, every transaction record, every security protocol I'd spent 11 years building. My supervisor called 17 times. I didn't answer. The CEO called twice. I didn't answer. Finally, a text from HR. "Lorraine, this is an emergency. We need you immediately. Please respond." I typed back 3 words. Appreciate the gesture. Then I turned off my phone. See, 2 weeks earlier, they'd given my colleague Derek a $32,000 retention bonus. I got $4,500. When I asked why, my manager smiled and said, "You should appreciate the gesture, Lorraine. Not everyone gets recognized." That night, I made a decision. If they didn't value my protection, they could face the consequences alone. Before I explain how one insulting bonus destroyed an entire company's security infrastructure, if you love stories about undervalued employees and corporations learning expensive lessons, hit that subscribe button and tap the like button right now. Trust me, you need to witness how this unfolds. My name is Lorraine Baptiste. I was 44 years old when Pinnacle Financial Services decided I was worth $27,500 less than my colleague. I'd spent 11 years building their cybersecurity division from nothing. When I joined, Pinnacle was a mid-sized wealth management firm in Charlotte, North Carolina. They handled investment portfolios for high net worth clients, the kind of people who expected absolute security and absolute discretion. Their technology infrastructure was a disaster. Outdated firewalls, unencrypted databases, passwords stored in spreadsheets. I'm not exaggerating, actual spreadsheets. The previous IT manager had retired, leaving behind a patchwork of systems held together by prayers and duct tape. I was hired to fix it. My background was unusual. I'd spent 15 years in military intelligence before transitioning to the private sector. Cryptography, network defense, the kind of work you can't fully describe to civilians. When I interviewed at Pinnacle, the CEO, a man named Harrison Whitmore, was blunt. "We're vulnerable," he admitted. "Our clients trust us with billions of dollars. If we get breached, we're finished. I can protect you, but I need resources, authority, and your people need to actually listen when I tell them something is dangerous." Harrison nodded. "Whatever you need." For 11 years, he kept that promise. I built everything from scratch: new firewalls, encrypted databases, multi-factor authentication before most companies knew what that meant. Intrusion detection systems that could identify threats before they became breaches. I trained the staff, implemented protocols, created a security culture that made Pinnacle one of the most protected financial firms in the Southeast. Not a single successful breach in 11 years. Not one. Clients noticed. Referrals increased. Pinnacle's reputation for security became a competitive advantage worth millions in new business. And for 11 years, I was respected, valued, treated like the essential employee I was. Then, Harrison Whitmore retired. Harrison's replacement was a man named Mitchell Crane, 41 years old, MBA from Duke, previously a senior executive at a large investment bank in New York. Mitchell was everything Harrison wasn't: flashy, ambitious, obsessed with metrics and optics over substance. He arrived with a mandate from the board: cut costs, increase margins, prepare the company for potential acquisition. I met him during his first week. "Lorraine Baptiste," he said, shaking my hand with practiced enthusiasm. "I've heard great things. 11 years without a breach? Impressive." "Thank you." Though I have to wonder how much of that is your doing and how much is just luck. I blinked. Excuse me? Don't get me wrong, I appreciate institutional knowledge, but cybersecurity is evolving rapidly. I want to make sure our approaches are current. Our approaches are current. I attend 3 security conferences annually. I maintain certifications that require ongoing education. Our systems are regularly audited by external firms. Mitchell held up a hand. I'm not criticizing, just asking questions. That's my job. He smiled that corporate smile, the one that means nothing. We'll talk more soon. We didn't talk soon. Mitchell avoided me for weeks, but he didn't avoid Derek. Derek Holloway was our director of IT operations. He joined Pinnacle 3 years earlier, hired to manage the hardware side, servers, workstations, network equipment. Competent enough at his job, though he frequently needed my guidance on security implementations. Derek was 36, conventionally handsome, and possessed the particular talent of making executives feel comfortable. He golfed with the right people, laughed at the right jokes, spoke the language of corporate ambition fluently. Mitchell loved him. Within a month, Derek was attending executive meetings I'd never been invited to. He was copied on strategic communications that bypassed my department entirely. He was positioned as the technology leader for Pinnacle's future. I watched it happen with growing unease. Then came the retention bonus announcement. Pinnacle was preparing for a potential acquisition by Harrington Capital Group, a massive deal that would transform the company. To prevent key employees from leaving during the transition, the board approved retention bonuses for essential personnel. I expected to be on that list. I was, but the numbers told a different story. The announcement came via individual meetings with HR. I sat across from a nervous-looking coordinator named Bethany, who handed me an envelope like it contained radioactive material. Congratulations, Lorraine. You've been identified as essential to the acquisition process. I opened the envelope. $4,500. I read the number twice. Is this correct? Bethany wouldn't meet my eyes. That's the amount approved for your position, yes. My position, not me specifically. The amounts were determined by role classification and other factors. What other factors? I'm not authorized to discuss the methodology. I sat there holding a piece of paper that reduced 11 years of work to a number smaller than my monthly mortgage payment. Who else received retention bonuses? Bethany hesitated. That information is confidential. Derek Holloway, how much did he receive? Silence. Bethany, how much? She swallowed. $32,000. The room tilted. 32,000. Derek, who'd been here 3 years, received 32,000. I, who'd built the entire security infrastructure from nothing, received 4,500. Thank you for your time. I walked out before I said something I regret. That afternoon, I requested a meeting with Mitchell Crane. His assistant made me wait 45 minutes. When I finally entered his office, he barely looked up from his computer. Lorraine, what can I do for you? I want to discuss my retention bonus. Ah, he leaned back. I expected this conversation. Then you understand my concern. I understand you might feel the amount is smaller than expected. Derek Holloway received $32,000. I received $4,500. He's been here 3 years. I've been here 11. I built the security systems that protect this entire company. Mitchell smiled. Lorraine, I appreciate your passion, but retention bonuses aren't based solely on tenure. They're based on future strategic value. Future strategic value? Derek is positioned to lead our technology integration post-acquisition. His role is expanding. Yours is stable. Stable. Mature. Established. The security infrastructure is built. It runs itself. I stared at him. It doesn't run itself. It runs because I maintain it, update it, adapt it to new threats daily. If I walked out tomorrow, but you won't. Mitchell's smile widened. That's the point. You've been here 11 years. You're comfortable. You have roots in Charlotte. Derek is younger, more mobile, more likely to be recruited elsewhere. The bonus reflects flight risk, not contribution. I felt my temperature rising. So I'm being penalized for loyalty? You're being recognized appropriately for your role. You should appreciate the gesture, Lorraine. Not everyone gets recognized at all. Appreciate the gesture. Those 3 words burned into my memory. Is there anything else? Mitchell asked. I stood. No, I think I understand perfectly. I walked out of his office, and I started planning my exit. That night, I sat in my home office and assessed my situation. I'd given Pinnacle 11 years, built their security from nothing, saved them from countless potential breaches, generated millions in client confidence and competitive advantage, and they valued me at $4,500, less than a month's salary, less than Derek's bonus by a factor of 7. The disrespect wasn't about money, it was about recognition, about being seen, about understanding that some contributions are invisible until they're gone. Mitchell didn't understand what I did because nothing had ever gone wrong. Maybe it was time for him to learn. I want to be clear about what I did and didn't do. I didn't sabotage anything. I didn't create vulnerabilities. I didn't invite hackers in or leave doors deliberately unlocked. What I did was simple. I stopped going above and beyond. For 11 years, I'd been on call 24 hours a day. I monitored systems on weekends. I responded to alerts at 3 a.m. I anticipated threats before they materialized. I did this because I cared, because I took pride in protecting the company I'd helped build. But I wasn't being paid for 24-hour vigilance. My contract specified standard business hours, with occasional after-hours response as needed. I decided to work exactly what my contract required, nothing more. I also began documenting everything, every security recommendation I'd made that was ignored or delayed, every budget request that was denied, every warning I'd issued about potential vulnerabilities. There were many. Mitchell had been cutting corners since his arrival. Security patches delayed to save overtime costs. Training sessions canceled because employees already know this stuff. Monitoring tools downgraded to cheaper alternatives that I'd explicitly warned against. I documented it all. Then I updated my resume. The job offers came quickly. 11 years of perfect security performance attracts attention. Within 2 weeks, I had 3 serious offers, all paying significantly more than Pinnacle, all with better recognition structures. I accepted a position at Meridian Security Consulting, Chief Security Architect, 40% salary increase, equity stake, actual respect. Start date, 3 weeks out. I submitted my resignation on a Friday afternoon. Mitchell's reaction was instructive. You're leaving? Mitchell stared at my resignation letter like it was written in hieroglyphics. Yes, I've accepted a position elsewhere. But the acquisition, the transition, we need stability right now. You have Derek. He's positioned to lead technology integration, remember? Future strategic value. Mitchell's face reddened. Lorraine, let's not be hasty. Perhaps we can discuss adjusting your retention bonus. The bonus was never about money, Mitchell. It was about respect. You made your position clear. I was speaking in terms of methodology, risk assessment. It wasn't personal. Everything is personal when you're telling someone their decade of work is worth 7 times less than a newcomer's potential. I stood. I'll complete my contractual 2 weeks. I'll document all systems and train whoever you designate as my replacement. But I won't be responding to after-hours emergencies anymore. That's not in my contract. Not in your, "Lorraine, you've always been available." Because I chose to be. I'm choosing differently now. I walked toward the door. You should appreciate my gesture, Mitchell. Not everyone gives 2 weeks. The next 13 days were fascinating. Derek was designated as my replacement. He attended my documentation sessions with visible panic, realizing for the first time how complex the security infrastructure actually was. "Lorraine, there are 17 different monitoring systems? Why so many?" Because we protect 17 different types of data with 17 different threat profiles. Each requires customized surveillance. Can't we consolidate? We could, if you want to create exactly the kind of vulnerabilities hackers look for. Derek took copious notes, understood maybe 40% of what I explained. It wasn't his fault. He was competent at IT operations, but cybersecurity is a different discipline entirely, one that takes years to master. Mitchell kept trying to negotiate. "What if we matched your new salary?" "It's not about the salary." "What if we gave you a new title, Chief Security Officer?" "Would that come with actual authority or just a nameplate?" He couldn't answer. I finished my 2 weeks, completed every documentation requirement, left detailed instructions for every system, every protocol, every contingency. I did everything right. And then I left. The breach happened 12 days after my departure, 3:17 a.m. on a Tuesday. I know the exact time because my personal alert system, one I'd maintained separately from Pinnacle's infrastructure, still pinged when certain threat signatures appeared. Old habit. I had monitored industry-wide attacks for years, always watching for patterns that might eventually target my systems, except they weren't my systems anymore. I watched the notifications cascade. Critical alert. Unauthorized access detected. Critical alert. Firewall breach in progress. Critical alert. Database encryption compromised. The attack was sophisticated but not unprecedented. A phishing campaign had compromised an employee's credentials. From there, the attackers had exploited exactly the vulnerabilities I'd warned Mitchell about, the ones he'd declined to address because of budget constraints. The monitoring tools I'd recommended, they would have caught this intrusion at the first stage. The training sessions Mitchell had canceled, they would have prevented the phishing success. The patches he'd delayed, they would have closed the security gaps the attackers exploited. I watched it unfold from my home office, and I didn't lift a finger. My phone rang at 4:23 a.m. Derek. I didn't answer. It rang again at 4:31 a.m. Mitchell. I didn't answer. By 5 a.m., I had 17 missed calls and 34 text messages. "Lorraine, please call back immediately. We have a critical situation. Need your expertise. Name your price, whatever you want." I read them all. Then I went back to sleep. At 6:47 a.m., an HR coordinator named Jessica sent a formal text. "Lorraine, this is an emergency. We need you immediately. Please respond." I typed back 3 words. "Appreciate the gesture." The phrase Mitchell had used when dismissing my concerns. The phrase that had reduced 11 years of dedication to a pat on the head. I turned off my phone, and I let Pinnacle Financial Services experience exactly what they'd been protected from for 11 years. The breach was catastrophic. Client data exposed, transaction records encrypted by ransomware, security protocols in shambles. By the time Derek and an emergency team regained partial control, 12 hours had passed. The attackers had exfiltrated sensitive financial information, affecting over 4,000 high-net-worth clients. The regulatory notifications alone would take months. The lawsuits would take years. I learned the details later from former colleagues who reached out after the dust settled. Derek had tried to contain the breach using my documentation, but documentation can only take you so far. Real crisis response requires instinct, experience, pattern recognition, things that can't be written down. He made mistakes, understandable mistakes given his limited security background, but mistakes that cost Pinnacle millions. Mitchell personally called me 6 times over the following week. I answered once. "Lorraine, I need you to consult, just temporarily. We'll pay whatever." "I'm not available." "This is serious. We could face regulatory action, client lawsuits. The acquisition might fall through." All of which I warned you about, repeatedly, in writing. Silence. "You documented everything," he said slowly. "I documented everything, including every budget cut, every ignored recommendation, every warning about exactly the vulnerabilities that were exploited. You're going to use that against us. I'm going to protect myself. The documentation proves I did my job. What you did with my recommendations is your responsibility." I hung up. The Harrington Capital acquisition collapsed within a month. Due diligence revealed the full scope of the breach and the systemic negligence that enabled it. Harrington's board decided Pinnacle was too risky. $500 million. Gone. Mitchell Crane was terminated 2 months later. The board finally reviewed my documentation and realized exactly what had happened. A new CEO had dismantled security infrastructure to cut costs, ignored expert warnings, and driven away the one person who understood how to protect them. Derek Holloway resigned voluntarily. The breach had been contained under his watch, or rather, not contained. His reputation was permanently damaged. I heard he's working for a small IT firm in Raleigh now, entry-level security consulting. Starting over. Meridian Security Consulting welcomed me with actual appreciation. My first week, the CEO, a sharp woman named Constance Abimbola, sat down with me personally. "Lorraine, I've reviewed your background. 11 years without a breach at a financial services firm. That's extraordinary." "Thank you." "I also reviewed what happened after you left." I tensed.
"Don't worry," Constance smiled. "I'm not judging. You did everything right. You warned them, you documented, you gave proper notice. What happened after is on their leadership. Some people might see it differently. Some people don't understand that security professionals aren't superheroes. We can't save organizations from themselves. We can only provide expertise and recommendations. Whether leadership listens is beyond our control." I felt something release in my chest, something I'd been carrying since the breach. "At Meridian," Constance continued, "we value our people, not because we're altruistic, because we're smart. Talented security professionals are rare. When we find them, we invest." She slid a folder across the desk. "This is your signing bonus and your equity stake documentation." I opened it. The signing bonus was $75,000. The equity stake was 2% of a firm valued at $40 million. I looked up at Constance. This is what you're worth. Get used to it." I've been at Meridian for 18 months now. I lead a team of 12 security architects. We consult for financial services firms across the Southeast, including, ironically, several of Pinnacle's former clients who lost faith after the breach. Those clients specifically requested me. We need someone who actually knows what they're doing, someone who won't get pushed aside by executives who don't understand the value of protection. I took those contracts personally, not for revenge, for vindication. Pinnacle Financial Services still exists, but barely. The breach resulted in $23 million in regulatory fines, legal settlements, and remediation costs. They lost 40% of their client base within 6 months. The company that was once worth $500 million is now valued at less than $80 million. Mitchell Crane never worked in financial services again. His name became synonymous with the Pinnacle disaster, a case study in what happens when executives prioritize optics over substance. I heard he's consulting now, leadership coaching for small businesses.
The irony isn't lost on me. I kept the original retention bonus letter, $4,500. Appreciate the gesture. It's in a frame on my home office wall, not at Meridian, that would be unprofessional, but at home, where I can see it every morning before work. It reminds me of something important. Your value isn't determined by what others choose to pay you. Your worth isn't measured by bonuses or titles or recognition. Those things are just reflections, sometimes accurate, often distorted, of contributions that exist independently of how they're perceived.
I knew what I was worth. I always knew. Pinnacle chose not to see it. And in the end, they paid far more than $27,500 for that blindness. People sometimes ask if I feel guilty about what happened to Pinnacle. I don't. I didn't cause the breach. I didn't create the vulnerabilities. I didn't ignore the warnings or cut the budgets or dismiss the expert recommendations. I simply stopped volunteering labor that wasn't valued. I worked my contract. Nothing more, nothing less. If Pinnacle couldn't survive without my unpaid overtime, my weekend vigilance, my 3 a.m. crisis responses, that was a structural problem, not a personal failing. Mitchell Crane built a house of cards and blamed me when the wind blew. The wind always blows eventually. That's why you need strong foundations. That's why you value the people who build them. If this story hit home, if you've ever been undervalued, underpaid, or told to appreciate the gesture while watching others receive what you deserved, drop a comment below. I read every single one. And if you haven't subscribed yet, now's the time. Hit that subscribe button and smash the like button. We share stories like this every day. Real accounts of corporate blindness, undervalued expertise, and employees who finally stopped subsidizing disrespect with free labor. Share this with someone who needs to hear it today, because somewhere out there, another essential employee is staring at an insulting bonus, wondering if they're overreacting. They're not. Know your worth, document everything, and never forget, protection has value. When they stop paying for it, they can stop receiving it. Thanks for watching. See you in the next one.